Strange Studies of Strange Stories.
Once upon a time, there was a merchant who had been married for 12 years and had only one daughter, Vasilisa the Fair. When her mother died, the girl was 8 years old. On her deathbed, the mother called the maiden to her, took a doll out of her counterpane, said, "Vasilisushka, hear my last words. I am dying and I will leave you my mother's blessing and this doll. Keep this doll always by you, but show it to nobody, and no misfortune can befall you. Give it food and ask it for advice. After it has eaten, it will tell you how to avoid your evil." Then the wife kissed her daughter and died.
Thank you, Mama, for leaving me with the blessing and this doll. You've also left me with a lot of questions. Like, where did you get a hungry, living doll? And how long were you hiding it under the covers?
Those are questions one might ask in a normal month. But this is December, a month of fairy tales and magic.
I still wonder, Mama, do I feed it regular food or like miniature fake doll food? Like a little plastic turkey leg?
All of these questions will be answered one way or another in today's episode, in which we are covering a famous Russian folktale, Vasilisa the Fair. Specifically, we're covering the version written by Russian folklorist Alexander Afanasyev and translated by Leonard A. Magnus.
Who was that reader we heard at the top?
Why, that was Kristina Baczynski, artist, writer, podcaster, and voiceover artist extraordinaire.
We haven't had Kristina on for a few years. What's she been up to?
Make sure you check out her newest book, The Wild Year, a field guide for exploring nature all around us, as well as her sci-fi classic, Retrograde Orbit. She also has an amazing Etsy store, so don't be shy. Check it out.
We're going to link out in the show notes to all of that. Thank you, Kristina. Also, we mentioned this last week on our classic episode, but gift subscriptions are now available for the podcast.
To give a gift, all fans have to do is select a gift period of anywhere from 1 month to 1 year, add a customized message, and share a redemption link with the recipient when they're ready. We'll link out to all this business in the show notes.
There was one woman I told about the gift subscriptions, and she was so psyched, she punched right through a brick wall.
Whoa!
She fought the hell out of that wall and won.
Man.
It was a holiday miracle. What are we talking about?
We are talking about Vasilisa the Fair, a Russian fairy tale.
This is also called Vasilisa the Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Where did you grab this one from?
Well, I found the story in Angela McAllister's children's book, A World Full of Spooky Stories, which I was reading to my son, Finney. The book has stories from all around the world, and I've always been fascinated by Baba Yaga, and this is one of her bangers.
You love Baba Yaga.
I do.
I think you were the first one to hit me to the Yaga when you lent me some Hellboy trades to read back in the day. Yeah. I was a little ambivalent about the whole Hellboy thing, to be honest, but then you said, well, check this out. This lady's house has chicken legs. I thought, well, okay, maybe there's something to this. And that opened me up to all of Mignola's work, actually. I have you and Baba Yaga to thank for that.
No.
This is the Russian folktale where she makes maybe her most famous appearance outside of Hellboy.
You know, I might even have a slightly supernatural origin to my love of Baba Yaga.
Really?
I had a dream when I was young, like in my early 20s, where there was this kid who was like my kid, this little girl out in a field, and there was a scream. And the kid goes, oh, I've got to go. And she ran away. And I'm like, where's my kid going? And she went into a hut. And I opened up the hut and it was empty. There was nobody in there. And it smelled like chicken manure. If you've ever been like in a chicken hut, it smelled like that. There was a stove that was on. And I went over to the stove and I was like, oh my God, is the kid in the stove? Is the kid in the stove? And just as I was about to open it up, something came up behind me and grabbed me. And I woke up. I told a friend about this and he goes, oh, that sounds like Baba Yaga. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he told me the story about Baba Yaga and I'm like, whatever. And then it just kept popping up in my life, you know, in Hellboy and all these other things. In fact, to the point in these notes, I'm a little weirded out by it because I'm not a superstitious person at all. However, I wrote a joke where I said Babs, called Baba Yaga Babs. and it made me uncomfortable, and I felt like it was inappropriate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something deep inside of me goes, ooh, don't do that. That would upset Baba Yaga if I call her Babs.
Well, I think fairy tales tap into that kind of collective unconsciousness that also manifests itself in dreams.
Yeah?
That's cool. Well, so where did you find this specific version we're reading?
Looking for older versions of the story, I discovered Alexander Afanasyev, who is basically the Russian version of the Brothers Grimm, in that he collected East Slavic and Russian fairy tales and folklore.
Tell me more about this Afanasyev.
He was born in Russia in 1826. In the 1850s, he was inspired by the Brothers Grimm and wanted to preserve the oral tradition of rural communities. Eventually, he collected over 600 folk tales, making his collection one of the most extensive in the world. Now, this collection, called Russian Fairy Tales, was printed in 8 volumes between 1855 and 1863.
Or you can just get one giant volume with each successive volume nested inside. This is apparently the only thing I understand about Russian culture.
Because he was into what the common people were laying down, he was in a bit of trouble with the Tsarist authorities.
I can imagine.
He was also a fan of Karl Marx, the least funny of the Marx brothers. And the powers, not saying he's not funny, he just wasn't as funny as the other brothers. And the powers that be did not like all that jazz. They saw him exalting these stories of the working class and promoting their beliefs and their values, which sometimes conflicted with those of the monarchy.
These people seem to want to do things that don't directly benefit me all the time. I guess we just have different values.
All monarchs sound like Skeletor to me.
In 1862, he was fired from his job at the Moscow archives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he died penniless in 1871 at the age of 45.
I did read Crime and Punishment last year, which was written around that same time in the 1860s.
Yeah.
It was not a fairy tale.
If we ever do Afanasyev After Dark, there is a whole bunch of collected folklore that is too hot for this podcast.
Really?
Folk Tales Not for Print was one of the names of it, or Russian Secret Tales, was published in Geneva in 1872, just a year after his death.
I found a site that studies and publishes them. There was some interesting information on the About page. Though the Forbidden Tales, originally mistranslated as Secret Tales, contain much that is shocking, obscene, and rude, they nevertheless remain an invaluable resource to folklorists and others that enjoy the study of cultures. The Forbidden Tales recorded by Afanasyev offer a unique glimpse into informal peasant life in 19th century Russia. Don't get us wrong. The sordid accounts of incest, bestiality, and genitalia contained in the text on the site aren't a direct reflection of the way that Russians actually behaved or what was even acceptable in their society.
Yeah.
Rather, the obscenity in the tales was used for comedic value, primarily for entertainment.
Of course.
Some scholars have suggested that tales such as these could be explained in 2 different ways. First, they could be following the ancient Greek tradition of ritual obscenity, which was seen as a means of lifting the spirits. Secondly, they could be seen as following the vein of medieval carnival, which entailed an occasional suspension of social norms in an attempt to release their inhibitions and let off some steam. A clever means of relieving the tension that could lead those hard-working lower classes to overthrow their rulers. Whatever the reasons may be for the existence of this collection, tales such as these were created by real people and widely distributed through the folk tradition in 19th century Russia. And now I've got to go learn more about the ancient Greek tradition of ritual obscenity. I didn't know about that. Why are you making me learn about all this stuff, Chris? First it's Baba Yaga. Now I got to read a story where somebody makes out with a minotaur? Stop getting me all corrupted up.
Well, let's get into this crazy story. 8-year-old Vasilisa's mom is dying. On her deathbed, she gives her daughter a doll and tells her not to show it to anyone. It must be secret. Every once in a while, feed it, and it will tell you how to avoid evil. Just like in all other fairy tales we've covered, a stepmother comes into the picture, and she is, of course, vile.
Yes.
But there is not only a stepmother, there are also 2 stepsisters who are about the same age as Vasilisa, and they also suck.
It's a Cinderella setup, and it fits the general shape of a Cinderella. Cinderella is in Grimm's fairy tales, but was well known before that. It's also known as the little glass slipper. The basic story shape, and I'm getting this from our old friend Jack Zipes, the protagonist is a young girl living in forsaken circumstances, who is suddenly blessed by remarkable fortune with her ascension to the throne via marriage. The story of Rhodopis, recounted by the Greek geographer Strabo sometime between 7 BC and AD 23 about a Greek slave girl who marries the king of Egypt, is usually considered to be the earliest known variant of the Cinderella story.
Vasilisa is very pretty, the title says so. The stepsisters are jealous of her beauty, so they always attack her and steal her food so that she gets skinny. and will not be as pretty. But that doesn't work. Vasilisa always does her work, and she doesn't complain.
Meanwhile, she gets plumper, she gets more beautiful, despite being starved and beaten up all the time.
What is her beauty secret? Is it from Teen Vogue? No, it's from the magic doll. She keeps the best bits of food for the doll, and at night, she sneaks the doll out and feeds it. She asks the doll what to do to survive in this hell house.
Dollet, eat and listen to my misery. I am living in my father's house, and my lot is hard. My evil stepmother is torturing me out of the white world. Teach me what I must do in order to bear this life.
The doll listens to her, gives her some good advice, and teaches her herb knowledge so that she can always find edible things in the woods.
And does all of her work for her while she gets to be a child.
Yep.
Vasilisa was told to go walking, plucking flowers, and all her flower beds were done in time, all the coal was brought in, and the water jugs carried in, and the hearthstone was hot. So thanks to the doll, she had a merry life, and the years went by. This doll in this story is super powerful. I know that I often say I'm not scared of little doll people. I'm not. I'll beat Chucky's ass any day of the week, but this doll demonstrates the ability to do the work of 10 people in secret over time.
Yeah.
I do anything this doll asks me to, because that's terrifying power. And in fact, I'm guessing that might even be what the doll is doing to get the work done. It's running a secret campaign of intimidation against townspeople who actually do the work.
Yeah.
In Russia, the doll plays with you.
As Vasilisa grows up, she goes from cute to hot, and all the boys in the village line up to chill with her. Her stepsisters get 0 likes.
You're really putting this in words I can understand.
Yeah, I'm trying to help.
Thanks, dude.
Since her daughters are getting no attention, her stepmother tells all of Vasilissa's suitors that she is not on the market until her daughters are married.
Kind of a Taming of the Shrew setup.
Yeah. Then she gives Vasilisa a good beating.
Right into a mommy dearest. I wonder how far you'd get with that pitch. I'm doing something. It's like Taming of the Shrew meets Mommy Dearest.
Oh, God.
What? But throw in a little sleeping with the enemy. What's the screenplay about?
Vasilisa's dad is away on business a lot, so he's not around to protect his daughter.
From the rest of the family, right?
Yeah. The stepmother knows about Baba Yaga's hut in the woods and decides to send Vasilisa to the area in the hopes of her getting eaten.
I was wondering when Baba Yaga was going to show up, so I was very excited at this moment. And again, we have that familiar motif of leaving the daughter in the woods, throwing her to the wolves, which I think is often a metaphor for the crossing of the threshold into adolescence. You know that in the woods, there's going to be helpers and there are going to be adversaries, often a witch, as in Hansel and Gretel. I feel like Baba Yaga is a cool variant of the traditional witch I know, like a variant action figure, I guess. The traditional witch comes with a broom and a cat, but this variant has a whole other set of cool accessories.
Yeah. Baba Yaga is a big part of Slavic folklore.
Yeah.
She's often depicted as super ugly, and she flies around in a large wooden mortar wielding a pestle.
It was kind of hard to wrap my head around that, just reading the story, like what it all looks like, because she's also got a broom.
Yes.
But after watching a few animated depictions, it's so cool. She's in the mortar, and there's room for other folks in there if needed. Sometimes she's got somebody in there with her. And the pestle is like a steering lever, like a tiller in a boat.
Yeah.
She maneuvers that with one hand, and then she's got the broom in the other hand behind the whole mechanism, sweeping away any trace of her passage.
She lives in a hut deep in the woods. The hut actually has giant chicken legs and can get up and move, so Baba Yaga might not be found in the same place.
And the front door could also face a wall or a cliffside or a hill or something. So to get access, you've got to ask the house to get up and turn around.
So neat.
Yeah.
Baba means grandmother or old woman, but it also had or has other pejorative meanings like old, dirty, or foolish woman.
So I guess it's kind of being used ironically in that movie, Barbarella. Sorry.
Yaga is a bit of a linguistic mystery. Afanasyev thinks it might have meant serpent in some lost dialect. It's also close to a few words in different languages, meaning whore, anger, witch, wicked, wood nymph, or pain.
This is not Baba Yaga's first appearance.
No. She first appeared in print in a book in 1755 called Russian Grammar, but she's also in a bunch of lupki prints, which are images and words often used to decorate houses or inns. And one of these has her, I love this picture, it's awesome. One of these images has her riding a pig into battle against a reptilian man called Crocodile.
Whoa.
So he's not a crocodile, he's like dude, he doesn't have like a long snout.
Yeah.
But he's reptilian, he's green and got a tail and stuff.
All right.
Another has her rocking out with this old man playing on some bagpipes, which I I didn't know bagpipes I thought they were just a Scottish thing, but I guess they're all over the world. It's
Yes.
not just a Scottish thing. Now, she's not always depicted as evil, sometimes being a medicine woman or a type of shaman. In this story, she's a cannibal.
In the forest, there was a meadow, and on the meadow, there was a hut. And in the hut, Baba Yaga lived, who would not let anybody in and ate up men as though they were poultry. See? There's more chicken imagery there. It's not just the feet.
Yeah.
So it's still matching up with your dream.
Yep.
Whilst she was moving, the stepmother sent her hated stepdaughter into the wood, but she always came back perfectly safe, for the doll showed her the way by which she could avoid Baba Yaga's hut. So her helper is still helping her.
The stepmother is flummoxed that Vasilisa isn't getting eaten, so she concocts a plan. She and her daughters will make Vasilisa think that she caused the last candle to burn out in the house and that they need to get fire elsewhere.
The idea being that since it is Vasilisa's fault, she'll have to be the one to go to Yaga's house and ask for a light.
Vasilisa knows what's up, so she sneaks off and asks the doll, "What do I do?" after feeding it. Oh, it's so creepy.
Maybe Theodore Sturgeon was thinking about this story when he wrote The Professor's Teddy Bear.
All right, yeah, could be.
Feeding the doll, getting information, I don't know.
The doll says if you take me with you, Baba Yaga can't hurt you, so don't sweat it. Vasilisa walks out into the dark forest. She sees a knight on a white horse gallop past her, and the forest lights up. She walks on, and another man rides by, and this one is wearing red. And after he passes, the sun rises. Vasilisa then walks throughout the night and the next day until she gets to Baba Yaga's hut.
The fence round the hut consisted of human bones, and on the stakes, skeletons glared out of their empty eyes, and instead of the doorways and the gate, there were feet, and instead of bolts, there were hands, and instead of the lock, there was a mouth with sharp teeth, and Vasilisa was stone cold with fright. Suddenly, another horseman pranced by on his way. He was all in black, on a jet-black horse with a jet-black cloak. He sprang to the door and vanished as though the earth had swallowed him up, and it was night. But the darkness did not last long, for the eyes in all the skeletons on the fence glistened, and it became as light as day all over the green. Vasilisa trembled with fear, but remained standing, for she did not know how she could escape. Suddenly, a terrible noise was heard in the forest, and the tree boughs creaked and the dry leaves crackled. And out of the wood, Baba Yaga drove in inside the mortar with the pestle, and with the broom swept away every trace of her steps. At the door she stopped, sniffed all the way around, and cried out, "Fee-fo-fi-fum, I smell the blood of Russian mum. Who is there?"
Fee-fo-fi-fum sounds a lot like Fee-fi-fo-fum from Jack and the Beanstalk. The version we're thinking of is from Joseph Jacobs' 1890 interpretation of that story, Jack and the Beanstalk. Shakespeare used fi-fo and fum in King Lear in 1605, but before that, fi-fa and fum was in the 1596 Thomas Nash pamphlet. I'm guessing the translator, Magnus, cool name, replaced a Russian phrase for this English version as it would have been well known in 1916 when this translation came out.
It's some series of phonemes that we've been speaking as humans clearly for like hundreds of years.
Yeah.
There was a kid in grade school who called me fee for fifer, fo for fum. I remember that so well. That was pretty much the extent of our relationship. But he would say it and he'd laugh and then I'd laugh and then that was kind of it. But it was clever. I noticed that Baba Yaga in that clip, she's not flying.
No.
Yeah, she's driving.
Yeah.
So she's winding around the forest in the mortar and pestle like it's a forklift kind of. Driving around. She's literally driving around.
She's driving around.
Really cool. Also, I love that she's decorated her house from the Halloween store.
Yeah.
That's going to come in handy later.
Vasilisa bravely approaches Baba Yaga and says, "Mother, my stepsisters have sent me out for fire." Baba Yaga says, "I know them. You are for me, and I'll give you fire. Otherwise, I'll eat you." Fair enough. The door to the hut opens at Baba Yaga's call, and she tells Vasilisa to get whatever's in the oven to feed her. I was a little worried here, but it's all right.
Yeah, are there going to be a bunch of Hansels and Gretels in there?
Yeah, exactly. But when Vasilisa checks, there is enough food for 10 men in there. The cellar has got tons of booze, and this place has awesome sweet stuff.
There's a lot of potential in these Baba Yaga toys I'm talking about. This Christmas, for the kids, Baba Yaga magic oven.
Ooh.
Baba Yaga cellar of booze.
Yeah.
Perfect for the kids.
Baba Yaga eats almost all of the food, just leaving some soup, a crust of bread, and a bit of pork for Vasilisa to eat. After eating all that food, Baba Yaga lies down for a sleep. She tells Vasilisa that tomorrow, When she's out, Vasilisa will have to clean the courtyard, brush out the room, get dinner ready, do the washing, and get some oats out of the field, and then sift through the oats.
And leave your phone on, Baba Yaga says. I'll probably need to email you 5-6 minutes before you go to bed.
Vasilisa, in full panic mode, gets her doll out and asks for help.
Have no fear, Vasilisa, thou fair maiden. Eat, pray, and lie down to sleep, for the morning is wiser than the evening. Last night I watched a 1977 Soviet-era animated version of this from Russia. I'll put a link in the show notes. It was called Vasilisa the Beautiful, but there were huge differences in the story. I could talk about those at the end. But this refrain, when nothing else was the same, this refrain was still there. The morning is wiser than the evening.
The following day, Baba Yaga is up before Vasilisa and looking out the window. The skull's eyes have dimmed. The guy on the white horse rushes by, and the sun rises. Baba Yaga goes out. Her mortar and pestle appear, and the red horseman rides by. The sun is now in the sky. Baba Yaga gets into her mortar, grabs the pestle and her broom, takes off. Vasilisa decides to go into the house and sees all of the oats have been sorted. The doll has done the work already.
Yes.
The only thing left to do is to make Baba Yaga's dinner, and she's got all day to do that, so not a problem. That evening, the black horseman rides by, and it becomes night. The skulls light up, Baba Yaga arrives, Vasilisa shows her the oats are all sorted, and Baba Yaga calls out. Then 3 pairs of hands take away the oats?
I don't know. That's one of those weird fairy tale.
It's like, what?
Yeah. I don't know. Are they little disembodied hands that are running around doing?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so. I think they might belong to, I don't know.
You think
they
they
belong
might,
to some kind of servant?
They might get, well, she refers to the horsemen as her servants later, so maybe they belong to the horsemen? I don't know.
Possibly. Baba Yaga eats and then goes to bed and tells Vasilisa to do the same that she did today, but also take the hay out of the field and clean every trace of soil off of it.
Yes. Since you did such a good job with that work I gave you, you can obviously afford more work. So here's some more stuff to do. Vasilisa goes to the doll again, who tells her, look, it's going to be fine. Just go to bed. And we have a repeat of the last day with the doll helping Vasilisa with her tasks. When Baba Yaga returns, she's happy with Vasilisa's work. During dinner, Baba asks Vasilisa, why are you so quiet? I mean, I know why I would be quiet and be terrified. Obviously, but you don't want to tell Baba Yaga that you're terrified of her. So she says that she has nothing to say, but she does have some questions.
Ask, but not every question turns out well. Too knowing is too old.
Vasilisa wants to know, what the hell's up with those horsemen? Baba Yaga explains that the white horseman is the bright day, the red one is the red sun, and the black one, you guessed it, dark night. They are her servants. Vasilisa doesn't ask any follow-up questions, so Baba Yaga asks, is that it? Vasilisa says, I know enough, for you say yourself, too knowing is too old. Baba Yaga says, good, because I eat people that are too curious.
There's a healthy dose of don't look a gift horse in the mouth throughout this story. And it happens again right here.
Baba Yaga then asks how Vasilisa got all the work done, and she answers, by my mother's blessing. Baba Yaga says, no one blessed can stay with me, so out you go. And take this skull with burning eyes with you. Baba Yaga then puts the skull on the end of a staff and gives it to Vasilisa. Now you've got fire for your stepsisters.
Get out and take this burning skull with you. Have you seen the paintings that are associated with this story?
I've seen some, and they're pretty cool.
They're by Ivan Bilibin, and there's one of Vasilisa with the stick with the skull. It's so cool. It looks almost like Art Nouveau.
Yeah.
I'll link out to those images so that you can check them out. But see, in this case, she did not tell her about the doll. She said, it's by my mother's blessing, but she didn't say, I have a magic doll.
Yes.
So she's still keeping the compact.
She's keeping the compact, and she is answering Baba Yaga's question, truthfully.
Yeah.
Vasilisa runs home and doesn't get back until the next day. When the sun rises, the skull's eyes go out. Vasilisa is about to toss the thing, but the skull speaks. Do not throw me away. Bring me up to your stepmother's house. Again, I've channeled some Skeletor for you.
Yeah, well, that was good.
It made sense. When Vasilisa gets inside, they're actually nice to her. They've explained that they've had no fire, and that anytime they go to the neighbors and get fire from them, the fire would go out once they came into the house. The stepmother says, maybe your fire will do the job. And then the eyes blaze and burn the stepmother and sisters to ash.
Whoa!
Yeah.
It's so matter of fact in the text, which is how it always is in fairy tales. But this thing's like the heat ray in War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
So they took the skull into the room, and the burning eyes looked into the stepmothers and the daughters and singed their eyes out. So the first attack is eyeball to eyeball, heat rays into the eyes. Wherever they went, they could not escape it, for the eyes followed them everywhere, and in the morning they were all burned to cinders. Vasilisa alone was left alive. That last sentence, just in case you thought this was some metaphorical burning.
Nope.
Nope, they're all dead.
They are dead. Vasilisa buries the skull, locks up the house, and then goes into town. She goes to a poor old woman and asks for some food, then tells the old woman to get her some flax and that she'll do some spinning for her.
That was a weird transition.
Yes.
She covered up her crime. She buried the skull. That part I go, well, I'd take the skull with me.
Well,
as part of the ensemble that helps me out. I got the doll and the skull. She's like, this links me to the crime. So she buried it.
It's unclear whether Vasilisa expected the skull to burn her stepmom and sisters to ash.
You're right.
Maybe she's like, oh, they're being nice to me. Maybe I can work this out and we can have a relationship. And the skull goes, and then they die. And she's like, oh my God, I didn't think that was going to happen.
That's true, because all it says is, then Vasilisa buried the skull in the earth, locked the house up, and went into the town. It doesn't tell you at all how she felt about this. Well, now she's with this old woman that she met, who takes pity on her, to watch her until her father gets back into town.
The spinning goes well. When she's alone, Vasilisa asks the doll to bring her some stuff, high-quality items to make some awesome fabric.
Right.
Vasilisa goes to bed, and in the morning, the doll has made the best cloth ever. Vasilisa tells the old woman to go into town and sell the cloth and to keep all the money for herself, because this woman obviously has been so kind to her, taking her in, that she wants her to make some coin.
Although, in this favorable environment, this is the first time that Vasilisa worked as well.
Oh, right.
Like, the doll didn't do everything. It says, the doll in the night made a splendid spinning stool, and by the end of the winter, all the linen had been woven.
Yep.
And it was so fine. So actually, I think it was Vasilisa who made
She did make it.
Yeah, she got help from the doll, but this time it was her own handiwork.
Yes. The old lady says this cloth is too good. Only the Tsar can have cloth of this quality. So she decides to take it to the Tsar.
The Tsar is impressed with this cloth and asks how much she wants for it, but the old lady says, this is priceless. I'll give it to you as a gift.
The Tsar says, okay, good. Okay, thank you. But I'm just going to give you a bunch of money anyway. And he sends her home. Some time passes and the Tsar wants some new shirts. So he calls on the old woman to make him some. She explains, I didn't make them. Vasilisa made them. And he says, okay, whatever, as long as I get my shirts.
That night, with the doll's help, she makes a bunch of shirts. The next day, the old woman brings them to the Tsar.
The old woman brought the Tsar the shirts, and Vasilisa washed and combed herself, dressed herself, and sat down at the window and waited. Then there came a henchman of the Tsar's, entered the room and said, the Tsar would fain see the artist who has sewn him the shirts, and he wants to reward her with his own hands. Vasilisa the Fair went to the Tsar. When he saw her, he fell deep in love with her. No, fairest damsel, I will never part from you. You must be my wife. So the Tsar took Vasilisa with her white hands, put her next to him, and bade the bells ring for the wedding. Vasilisa's father came back home and was rejoiced at her good luck, and stayed with his daughter. Vasilisa also took the old woman to live with her, and the doll ever remained in her pocket.
Aww.
That's the end of the story.
Yeah, the end. Now, I've read that the doll, maybe it represents the mother's wisdom and knowledge. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's something a lot of us hope, that we pass down our knowledge and wisdom to our children so that they can navigate the trials and tribulations of life.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
And Baba Yaga is frightening and wise, so maybe she is an aspect of nature. You can use nature to survive, but also it will kill you if you don't deal with it properly.
That's right, yeah.
And a lot of the Baba Yaga stories, she's a keeper of knowledge and wisdom. People come to her for help, but they usually have to earn it. I was reading some of the other Baba Yaga stories, almost all like this, where somebody needs something, they go out in the woods, Baba Yaga's there, they got to prove themselves to her, and they do. She grants them some kind of boon, and then they go back and rock.
Yeah, maybe it's like that's the person outside of your family who's going to first be a boss, because Baba Yaga's sort of just her boss.
Yeah.
For a while. Mm-hmm. As long as she commits to doing that job, even though she's just getting something transactional out of it, she's rewarded for it.
There's a few stories where Baba Yaga's just a mean witch, and then the hero or heroine of the story outwits her in some way and defeats her. That's the whole thing. But most of them, she seems to be like evil, but still kind of good if you play her fair.
Right. Some interpretations I was reading of the story were pretty heady.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I got what you're saying, and then also it really made me feel like it was about resilience. That the doll is an aspect of Vasilisa, that they're actually the same character.
Oh.
So the reason nobody else ever sees the doll is because the doll isn't really real. The doll is a different version of the self.
Right.
It kind of makes me think about the Marcus Aurelius quote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present."
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, build yourself up now, take care of yourself. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Fear is going to distract you from that.
Yeah.
Keep the doll fed. Get your sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eat, pray, lie down to sleep, for the morning is wiser than the evening. By the end of the day, you're so exhausted that is not a good time to be making decisions.
Right.
Get your food, get your sleep, and it's going to serve you well in both adverse circumstances and in positive circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So she had a terrible home life, and then she had a bad job. But then when she was in a more favorable situation, she kept the doll there all along. Sort of like her ambition that she kept fed as well,
Yeah.
Once the world favored it, she was able to make those shirts and show like what really was her thing.
Yeah.
Now, the 1977 Soviet animated version was really pretty, and but it was about guys. It was like the king had 3 sons, and they all went out to get brides. And one of them gets this frog bride, who is Vasilisa.
Huh?
And she can turn into a human at night and do different things for him. So the king says, "I want all of your brides to make me shirts." And so she turns into a human and makes her shirts. It was very strange. It was like, and then at the end, Baba Yaga did show up at the end, but it was markedly different from this story. Except for the eat, pray, and lie down to sleep, the morning is wiser than the evening. There was some repackaging of that.
Wow.
But I'll link out to it. Check it out. So I think there's some wild variations. I actually saw a few that followed that one too, that it was these boys and their wives. Thanks for selecting this one, and I'm glad to find out that this had some sort of somnambulistic connection for you.
Oh, well, yeah. Honestly, I didn't call her Babs, and I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm glad. Well, I wouldn't want
I don't want
you to have to suffer the wrath of Baba Yaga.
I don't want to do that. I want to thank our reader, Kristina Bachensky.
Thank you so much. You did a great job. I'm so glad to have her back on the show.
Please go to her Etsy site and check out all of her great books. She is a talented artist and writer and a delightful person.
I would like to thank some of our stakers as well. These are the folks that make these free shows possible. And I'm going to start by thanking the king of all the snakes.
I'd like to thank Jay Robinson in Evanston.
I'd like to thank Alistair Brooks.
Shmail Khan, thank you.
Christopher Rosser, thank you so much.
It's a Ghost, thank you.
John Morgan, thank you.
Angelina Brown, thank you.
My man, Eric Gordon, thank you.
I'd like to thank Eric Espalone, MD.
Richard Wolf, thank you.
And lastly, Bene, you are a treasure.
We're going to be back next week with Tygo Kane and the Corpse, and then the week after that, we're going to be talking about Grimm's Fairy Tales, so you're not going to want to miss out. Please subscribe on Patreon if you're not already subscribed, and don't forget, you can gift a subscription to this show to, anyone you want.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
It's true.
And with that, I'm Chris Lackey.
I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And you've been listening to
Strange Studies of Strange Stories.
Strange Studies of Strange Stories.